Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're cracking open a really fascinating and honestly highly debated toolbox in the software architecture world, domain-driven design, or DDD. Now, we all know it's an incredibly powerful set of ideas. It gives us things like ubiquitous language, bounded contexts, and strategic design. But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. Just like any professional-grade toolbox, it takes some serious, substantial effort to actually use it right. It demands your dev team spend a ton of time deeply understanding the business, collaborating with domain experts, refining that shared language, and intentionally molding the code around some very real, and let's face it, sometimes very messy, business concepts. It's definitely not a magic wand you can just wave over your codebase. So today, we're going to break down exactly when all that massive effort actually translates into real business value, and when you're better off just keeping that toolbox completely shut.
Okay, let's dive right in. We need to fundamentally shift how we frame this whole conversation. Usually when teams stumble onto domain-driven design, the very first thing they ask is, well, is DDD good? But honestly, that's just the wrong question. A much better, far more critical question we should be asking ourselves is DDD worth using for this specific problem? Think of it like balancing a giant scale. On one side, we've got the heavy effort we were just talking about, the time, the endless meetings, the rigorous modeling, and on the other side, the actual tangible business value generated by the software. If the effort outweighs the value, well, you're just engineering for the sake of engineering. We really need that value to clearly tip the scales.
Which brings us to Section 1, defining the core domain.
The real secret to tipping those scales in your favor is figuring out exactly where DDD actually belongs. And the simple answer? It only belongs where a company creates its absolute unique advantage. Literally everything else is secondary. In the DDD world, we call this the core domain. Now, a core domain isn't just a random feature, right? And it's definitely not just a department in your company. It's the beating heart of your business's success. It is that specific area where the business creates unique value. It's exactly where the company desperately wants to outpace its competitors, to be faster, smarter, or just more innovative. If the software you're building supports this critical part of the business, suddenly all that heavy lifting of DDD starts looking like a brilliant investment. Let's think about this with an online grocery analogy. You could have two different companies in the exact same industry, but they have completely different core domains. Picture an online grocer where their whole competitive edge is this incredibly personalized shopping experience. Their system recommends products perfectly, it handles out-of-stock substitutions like a genius, and checkout is totally effortless. For them, that seamless shopping experience is what keeps customers coming back. So that's their core domain. But then look at another grocery company. Maybe their app is just kind of okay, but their real superpower is flawless, lightning-fast delivery. They figured out this unique way to predict demand, assign drivers, and optimize city routes in real time. For them, delivery planning is the core domain. The big takeaway here? What counts as core is entirely a business decision. A feature that's just an ordinary everyday task for one company might be the absolute lifeblood of another.
So, once you've actually identified that core domain, you have to look at the rules running the show. Domain modeling becomes incredibly valuable when your software has to untangle a really messy web of complex business rules. I'm talking about systems dealing with a massive variety of special cases, tricky policies, crazy multi-step workflows, deep decision trees, and just endless exceptions. When the real-world business is that inherently complicated, trying to hack it together with some simple code is just going to create a fragile, tangled mess. That's exactly where domain-driven design shines. It helps take that massive ball of complexity and molds it into a clear, understandable model that actually mirrors reality. Now, contrast those deeply complex rules with a simple CRUD application. Create, read, update, and delete. If you're just building a basic admin panel where users are essentially filling out simple forms that dump data straight into a database table, please do not use a full DDD approach. It is massive overkill. Throwing rich domain models and deep strategic design at a system with practically zero business complexity doesn't help at all. Actually, scratch that. It makes things way worse. It makes the whole system so much harder to understand. In those cases, keeping the design simple is almost always your best bet.
Here's a great guiding principle to remember. DD is most helpful when the application is expected to grow and change over time. This is a huge factor in our whole effort versus value equation. We all know software is rarely ever truly finished. If the business is going to keep evolving, if they're inevitably going to throw new rules at you, and if the software needs to constantly adapt to new market realities, then investing in a strong, well-structured domain model pays off again and again. It lets a small system scale up into a much larger one, while keeping everything neatly organized into clear, manageable chunks.
Let's shift gears to Section 2, Business versus Technical Complexity. This is a trap a lot of teams fall into. Just because a system is incredibly hard to build does not necessarily mean it needs domain-driven design. We really have to separate the type of complexity we're dealing with. There's a stark contrast between business complexity and technical complexity. We already know DDD is tailor-made to tackle business complexity, the policies, the exceptions, all that stuff. But consider the flip side. Some systems are extremely difficult to build primarily because of the tech. Imagine a video streaming platform that has to juggle massive global traffic, low latency, video encoding, and crazy caching, or an instant messaging system managing millions of concurrent connections at a colossal scale. Those are technically highly complex systems, right? But the actual business rules, like user A sends a message to user B, might be incredibly simple. In those scenarios, DDD isn't the hero you need. Your team needs expertise in distributed systems, performance engineering, and infrastructure design, not rich domain modeling.
And you know what? This same principle applies directly to integration, too. If the absolute hardest part of your job right now is trying to connect a dozen ancient legacy platforms, translating completely obscure file formats, and wiring up third-party APIs, well, you're facing a technical problem. The real complexity there lies in the technical connections and those data pipelines. It's not in the business model itself. Applying deep domain-driven design to a pure integration headache might help a tiny bit, but fundamentally, it's a tool trying to solve a totally different problem than the one you're actually stuck on.
All right, let's pull all this together into Section 3, the DDD decision checklist.
Let's rapid-fire the criteria for when you absolutely should take the advanced path and use DDD. First, use it when the domain is business-critical, meaning it's central to the company's survival and success. Second, go for it when the business rules themselves are genuinely complex. Third, use it when the software needs long-term evolution and is guaranteed to grow over time. And fourth, this one is absolutely vital. Use it when a deep, shared understanding between the tech team and the business folks is essential to getting the job done. Building that shared understanding is exactly how you transform a confusing business landscape into crystal clear code.
Okay, and right on the heels of that, here's your inverse checklist. Consider this your official permission to just keep things simple. Avoid DDD when the application is simple, like your basic CRUD app. Skip it when the domain is ordinary and not strategically tied to the company's unique value. Don't use it if an off-the-shelf solution works perfectly fine out of the box. And finally, avoid it when your main challenge is purely technical rather than business-related. Remember, domain-driven design is not about flexing and using advanced patterns everywhere just to look smart. It's about choosing the right tool and the right level of design for the exact problem sitting right in front of you. Which brings us to our final big takeaway. The goal of domain-driven design is never, ever to make a system more complicated. The true goal is to make important complexity easier to understand, easier to discuss with your team, and easier to express elegantly in your software. When you have a business domain that's incredibly rich, constantly shifting, and absolutely central to your company's success, DDD is the ultimate tool to align your code straight to those business goals. So I want to leave you with this. Look at the projects currently sitting on your desk right now. Which ones are actually hiding a core domain that's truly worth this level of effort? And which ones are just begging to be kept delightfully simple? Take a hard look at your scale before you plan your next sprint. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep building smart.